So my name is Stephanie Stronsick, and I'm the founder and executive director of Pennsylvania Bat Rescue.
Hello, I'm John Rossi. I'm a touring drummer with a passion for animal conservation. When I'm on the road, I spend as much time as possible visiting zoos, aquariums, and conservation organizations. Now, I want to share those places with you. I'll be talking to keepers, vets, conservationists, anyone who can help me in my mission of connecting my people to animals through their people. Join me on my Rossifari. Hello, and welcome back to a brand new episode of the Rossifari podcast. All right, y'all, we're going to try something a little different here. Moving forward for the next couple weeks and starting with this one, I'm going to do a slight format change that I wanted to tell you all about. And that is what you heard at the beginning, which is just that instead of doing a teaser that doesn't really make sense, that you may or may not get where the humor is coming from, and that, frankly, I have to remember to snip out every single week or try to find when there aren't cute, quick, pithy ones. I'm just going to start every episode with the person introducing themselves, and then they will be introducing themselves and where they're from so that I don't have to introduce them in here, and you don't have to hear me say a whole bunch of oh, and you'll hear more about that in the episode because you'll already know what's coming. It'll also cut down on the amount of time it takes to get to interviews normally, though not if I want to talk to you about stuff like this. So, I'm going to try that for the next couple weeks, and I want y'all to let me know what you think about that. Also, I am going to sometimes, not always, but sometimes I will put what would have been the teaser or maybe a blooper or some other funny thing from the interview at the end of the credits as a little gift to those of you who stick around through the credits. It won't always be there. It'll be like a Marvel movie. Sometimes they'll be funny, sometimes they'll matter, and sometimes there will be nothing. So you can stick around to the end of the credits and find out if you will hear something there. You will this week. Also wanted to do some quick housekeeping here. Remind y'all to make sure that you hit subscribe. Make sure that you are following along at Rossifari on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, and at Rossifari Pod on TikTok. Also, don't forget about patreon.com/Rossifari, where you can go and support the pod for as little as $3 a month. And you can get some bonus audio from some of the episodes, including this one. And I want to say this both to my non-patrons who might be interested, and also to my patrons who maybe haven't been checking out all of the bonus audio. I've been working really hard to really improve that side of things for y'all. Sometimes in the past, it's been as simple as asking for, an extra quick little discussion about one extra animal that a keeper takes care of or something like that. And that still happens from time to time. A lot of times, what I can get for the patron bonus is based on the amount of time and energy that my guest has left, honestly. But I have been working really, really hard to make them deeper and longer and more intense. And I can tell you that this week's patron bonus audio is over 20 minutes long. So it's almost a third. Actually, it's more than a third of the interview length. So there's a lot of good stuff there, and we go deep. And a lot of times I go deep as well as my guests. So if you haven't checked out the last bunch of patron bonus things, you really should if you're a patron. And if you're not, now is a great time to become a patron. All of those links are always there. So when you sign up, you can go back and listen to years of patron bonus audio. All right, I have said enough. And this was still shorter than most intros, even with my intro to the new intro. So without further ado, here is my interview with Stephanie Stronsick of the Pennsylvania Bat Rescue.
We are located in basically the countryside of Mertztown.
Yeah, big old famous Mertztown. I'm sure you all know that place, but in case you don't, it is in Pennsylvania, and we are kind of above Reading-ish, I think.
Yeah, we are almost in the middle of Reading and Allentown.
Okay, so. Cool. Yeah. And I found y'all online because there are amazing bat photos that y'all take. And it's pretty cool. I grew up in the Harrisburg area, and I live down by Philly now. And so having something like this, in my home area is very exciting to me. And it's funny. So describe your huge facility here and describe what this is to everybody.
So most wildlife rehabilitators actually have to live on site because of the demand of the wild animals, as far as feeding babies and treating critical care animals. Sometimes it's around the clock situation. And our facility is smaller than you would expect it to probably be because the animals are smaller, but we are actually running out of space. So we are hoping to renovate and expand our physical space in hopefully April, but it might be delayed a little bit until May or June. But we house a lot of bats all year round, so we don't really get downtime. So unfortunately, there's a lot of bats in there all the time.
And there are a lot of bats in there. But let me be clear. We're at a house.
We are.
In a neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I did not expect that. I was pulling up and I'm like, I'm in this neighborhood. I wonder when I will hit the road that will take me to, the back.
The giant facility?
Yeah, not even giant, but just like, just like, I figured I'd hit a dirt road and then we'd go like 2 miles and then no, I was like, oh, there's a neighbor and here we are. And we're at your house. We are at your kitchen table right now.
We are.
And that is astonishing. And, one of the things that I was excited about when I realized what this facility is that I always tell my listeners that you can be involved, that you can make a difference, that one person can make a difference. Mm-hmm. And you are the epitome of that. Your garage is saving bats.
Yeah.
That's incredible. And so I really look forward to sharing all of this story with everyone. But it's so cool to see that because so often, like I was saying beforehand, I go to places like the San Diego Zoo and there are miles of place and thousands of staff and it's all amazing what they can do. But here is one person actually making a difference. And I know there are like 2 or 3 of you involved, but really this was your baby. And so, yeah, I'm excited to talk about that. So let's dig into it. When did you first realize that you are an animal nerd?
Since the moment I can remember life.
Nice.
I grew up in a very rural area, very wooded. There were ponds and streams. There was a small orchard we had. It was very country style. There was not a lot of people at that moment in the area. And so I enjoyed nature. My father was a huge nature enthusiast, my grandparents. So those are the people I spent most of the time with. And a lot of those people, especially my father and my grandfather, they didn't fear anything. And I think as a child, when you're growing up and you grow up with other people's fears, they become your own sometimes. And so they didn't fear snakes, which at the moment, I didn't really enjoy as a child. But now I've come to enjoy them. And they didn't fear bats. They didn't fear the night, all that craziness. So I grew up enjoying everything. And I think that makes a world of difference.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. As a matter of fact, I used to be a huge arachnophobe and overcame it on the podcast. And my dad was afraid of spiders. And from talking to him and my mom, I don't think I was when I was really, really little. They didn't faze me. But I kind of learned that dad was, and he's like a hero to me. So, of course, spiders have to be scary. And actually, much, much later in life, I found out, no, they're really cool. But it is interesting how you can learn that kind of thing. And so what path did you take then, as you grew up to get to the point where you're doing what you do?
It was a long path with many side roads. So as a child, I had a lot of animals, and I was the kid playing in the stream and collecting the salamanders and looking at the salamanders and just really being enthused by what nature had, the gems of nature. And then, as a teenager, you kind of lose sight of that. And then in my 20s, I started volunteering with a organization out there. It was a herpetological society. And so one of their members directed me to a wildlife rehab organization based in San Diego, California, called Project Wildlife. And I started volunteering there, and it kind of just blossomed into this love again. I fell in love again with animals. And so I didn't go to school for bats or rehab or anything like that. I just kind of stumbled across it because I just had this desire to work with them again. And then, of course, I went to school later on, but that wasn't where I thought I'd be. And I didn't think I'd be a bat rehabber for sure.
Right. No, I mean, who knew that was a thing you could do, when you're coming up? They didn't have a lot of bat rehabbers at career day, if I remember correctly.
No, I don't think so.
I don't know what would scare them off more from, the standard schools, the idea of bat rehab or just like all the tattoos.
Yeah.
Which is a prerequisite, by the way, for working. With
today's
animals.
Standards are a little bit different. Back then it was like, okay, not so much appreciated, but today they are. I'm like a living mural of what I do. So I'm like a commercial of what we do here, and I enjoy it. A billboard per se.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's very cool. So why bats? Why bats? That's the question.
I get asked that a lot. So when I started at Project Wildlife, I actually started rehabbing songbirds. And they had this kind of the way that they were or might be still set up. You would work with the animals that were easiest to work with, and then you would build upon that. So I started working with songbirds and then raptors, shorebirds. And then I noticed that they take every native species at that time, which was 2007, I believe. But they didn't take bats. And I was like, well, that's weird because, there's other rabies vector species. So I became, for whatever reason, I don't even know, I just found interest in bats. And I really stem it back to my childhood. And my grandparents, they owned a very old 1700s colonial style home with exposed beams on the wraparound porch. And there were always bats. And I remember looking up at them all the time. And I was just amazed by their social interactions. And so I fell in love with them again, as many things. I fell in love with them again. And I reached out to the bat rehabber himself and became rabies inoculated with the rabies vaccine and started working with him with bats. And I found that so many people have this giant misconception of them. And all it really takes is just seeing them either in person or in a photo or a video where it's really displaying their actual personality and not this vampire-ish kind of ideology in this photo or whatever. So we try to expose the bats for what they really are and hope that it helps encourage people to educate themselves a little bit more and appreciate them.
Yeah, and that makes sense. I'm curious, I get why people are afraid of spiders, because I used to be. And I've read some studies about it, and scientists and psychologists tend to think that it's because of how they move. And that's actually true of snakes, too. And there's even this one study that has been peer-reviewed, and, it looks pretty solid, that says that they have never found anybody who is both afraid of spiders and snakes. Because it's like one motion bothers you and not the other kind of thing, whatever. I find it all very interesting. But for the life of me, I cannot understand why people are afraid of what basically amount to furry flying puppies. Like, even just looks-wise. Like, if you ever see a bat's face, and on your Instagram, there are many, they're adorable. This is literally, like, I know there are people who are afraid of, like, dogs and stuff, whatever, but, like, bats get such a bad rep, and they're so freaking cute and interesting and social. Do you have any theory as to why it is that so many people are afraid of them?
I do, and it's mostly based on other people's perception. So when we get phone calls about bats and some of them are just absolutely traumatized and they're screaming in my ear. It's very challenging sometimes. And you have to understand that people are afraid of things and not to criticize them for being afraid of them, but help them understand a little bit more about that animal or that situation or whatever. So I listen to them and I hear what they're saying and why they're afraid of them. Sometimes it's because they swoop too close. And the fact that they fly, some people tend to be afraid of birds, and the people who are afraid of birds typically are afraid of bats just because it's a flight motion. And also bats are kind of erratic and unpredictable, and that's based on their sonar. They don't fly linear like birds, so they have a very erratic, unpredictable pattern, which can scare people sometimes. But understanding why they fly the way they do, or why, if you're standing in the middle of your living room at 2 a.m. and a bat is flying towards you, it's actually not trying to scare you, but you're standing in the middle of the room where they gain the most speed. So they come down and they swoop back up. It's about gaining speed. It's not about attacking you. So sometimes just clarifying that might help. But,
No, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And for those listening who might be going, ew, bats right now, can you just talk a little bit about that? Like, why do they fly like they do? And why are they the coolest thing out there? Because they really are. They are the coolest thing in the sky. They just are.
Yeah, so bats actually fly, as I said, a little bit differently than birds because their finger bones are very different. Their anatomy is very different compared to birds. They are defying every law of being a mammal. They fly. They're true flyers. They're the only mammals capable of true flight. And so they can manipulate each finger bone because they have joints and they have tendons and they have muscles, and they can manipulate their finger bones to fly in a specific way, whether it be to change their flight pattern in a split second to collect an insect in midair, or do a somersault. Bats can do somersaults in midair.
That's so cool. I didn't even know that. That's really cool.
Yeah, they are so amazing. And they have the coolest flight pattern when they are hunting. And so they can manipulate their flight. And they can also sometimes manipulate their flight and become adapted to a different flight pattern if they have tears in their wing or holes in their wing. It doesn't mean that bat is doomed for death if it has a hole in its wing. It just means it will heal and it'll fly and it'll counteract the wind and how it hits the wing to be able to fly appropriately. So they fly the way they do to avoid predation, to hunt for insects, which all we have here in Pennsylvania and North America are insect-eating bats. There are two species in the southwestern portion of the United States that are nectar-feeding bats. They're critically important, especially if you like tequila. They're off the Florida Keys. There is a small fruit bat, but collectively, most of the bats in North America are insect eating.
All right. That's very cool. Yeah, I just love bats, but you're right. I think it is important to not mock people too much for their fears. But yeah. Okay. So, what is, how, okay, well, let me rephrase that. How did you get started?
That is a great question. I got started in San Diego, California, for bats specifically, in California in 2008. Feels like forever ago. And then I moved back to my home state of Pennsylvania. And it was a really hard time at that moment because white nose syndrome was a really big situation. And it was very challenging on so many levels, but I really enjoyed rehabbing and working with wildlife, specifically. And so I just did not make excuses. I found ways to do this. And I think if anyone out there is interested in wildlife rehab or anything in life, and there's not a set criteria or a job description for what you want to do, create it yourself. And that's essentially what I did. And that's mostly what most rehabbers do. And it is hard. It is hard work. We don't get days off. And I've been doing this for 16 years with a family, going to school, having jobs. It's not my job. It's my dedication. I do have other jobs that I do. So it's a really big challenge, but if you really want to do something, you just won't make excuses.
Yep. No, I agree. I'm a big fan of that. That's what I did with the podcast. And even, my day job as a professional drummer, there is no path. I'm constantly hustling and figuring it out. And yeah, I appreciate people who are able to do that. It's a very cool thing. So do you just, one day say, hey, I'm a bat rehabber now, and then just start taking bats into your house? Or do you have to get permitted? Like what,
Yeah.
for people who are listening, what is the official thing that lets you do this?
Yeah. So it depends on the state in which you live. For Pennsylvania, it's a little bit more of a process. You undergo working with a licensed rehabilitator for 2 years. You gain experience. You learn how to handle those specific animals. You learn their diets. Diet is really important, and you're not going to find that on the internet. You might find information, but it's not good information. And then you apply for the application to be a licensed wildlife rehabilitator, and you have inspections. You meet with the council. It's a process, but it's one in which I feel is a really good process because you want to make sure that that person or people understand what they're about to get into and make sure that they do it professionally. We are professionals, even though we are not paid by the state or the federal government or anybody. We're not paid. We don't get money from those government agencies, but we are licensed through government agencies. So we are professionals for the community. And it's a process, but it's a necessary one because there are things that you must know. You need to know zoonotic diseases. You need to know things like that. You're dealing with wild animals.
No, absolutely. And you just got your master's? Am I remembering correctly?
Bachelor's. I wish it was a master's.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
That was right. Yeah, I know. I reached out initially to do this interview, and you're like, finals.
I'm in school.
Like, sorry.
I'm dying. Save me.
Very cool. What did you get your degree in?
Environmental science and biology.
Nice, nice. Very cool. I'm working towards a master's in biology right now, and it is a lot.
Oh, so you understand.
I do. Yeah, no, when you sent that, I was like,
I get it. Yes. Oh, man. I feel so bad because I am so behind on emails, and it's not like I'm eating Cheetos on the couch and avoiding everyone. It's that I'm going to school or was going to school, and now I'm focused on mycology, believe it or not. That is something of a trajectory for me.
Okay. Very cool. Also, it is the 4th year of a pandemic. If you want to sit on your couch and eat Cheetos and ignore emails, you're allowed. You're allowed. You're allowed.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't think either of us are the type of personality that would do that, but no. You're allowed at this point.
Yes.
So let's talk about some of your current bat friends. So how many do you have in the garage right now?
In total, we have 109 bats.
That's insane.
Yeah, and overall this past year we took in 300 and I want to say 27, but I don't remember the number off the top of my head. Each year it progressively gets more and more, whether it be bats that actually need help. Most bats, I would say 99.9% of them need to come into rehab. And people say, oh, well, it's grounded, put it on a tree, it's fine. Well, we don't know if that animal is injured. And bats being flying mammals, they dehydrate. They have a high surface area and they have evaporative loss very quickly. And they also have a really high metabolism and fast respiration, which means if they're not replenishing their energy, they are starving. So bats can easily starve more so than some other animals. So most of the bats that come into care need to come in for one reason or another.
Okay. And how do you find these bats out there? Do you just go walking through the woods and find them laying around, or?
I don't. I mean, I do go walking through the woods, but I never find bats, believe it or not. So it's actually the public. We rely on community, people just doing their daily lives. They might go out shopping and see a bat on a sidewalk because a bat that's injured, that was just hit by a car, obviously can't fly, becomes grounded and is now on the sidewalk or the side of a building. Sometimes people find baby bats that fell from mom, all multitudes of issues. And we provide a valuable service for the community and a way for them to get that animal help. So it's actually the public that finds these bats.
That's cool. And then you have to build your brand and awareness so that they know to contact you. That's Wow, that's a big responsibility.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like,
It's a
whoa.
24/7 responsibility.
Yeah, that's amazing that you're having such success with that, though, and especially an animal that people fear. You think they'd be like, "Oh, look, a dying bat, good," but they reach out, and that's very cool. Tell me about some of the stars that you have right now, because I know that the bats are named.
So, not all of them.
Not
That's a
all
lot
them,
of
some
names.
them. Yeah, no, that's fair. That's fair. That's my wife names every Pokemon that she catches in the game, which is like 400 or 500 of them by the end.
Oh my gosh.
She names everyone. I'm like, wow.
Wow. She can help name the bats.
Trust me, she would love nothing more. But yeah.
So we have the Countess. She is a hoary bat that was found 2 summers ago. And she was grounded after a cluster of pine trees were cut down. She was too young to fly, so she fell quite a distance. They can roost up to 40 feet in conifers. So she's currently a star making her rounds. A lot of people love the video of her chewing a mealworm. I saw that and I was like, wow. I never thought this floofy little panda would get so much love, but I'm glad she is. Zeus, we nickname him Zeusy Poo.
You give this strong name of Zeus, and then you're like, Zeusy Poo.
It is so adorable. I love him. He was found also really young after a really bad thunderstorm. And I think he was either just learning to fly or he was hanging on mom. And he was quite large to be hanging on mom. So he was likely learning to fly, and he just probably got knocked out of the sky, and he came into care, and my goodness, he has a personality. And then we have Loki.
Hold on. You can't say, my goodness, he has a personality, and then leave it there. Describe the personality. Tell us what Zeus is like.
Zeus has a strong personality, like his name suggests. He does not like any other bat being fed before him. So he will emit this high pitched sound. It's deafening when he hears the mealworms. And then
Now, do you give in? Or are you just like, okay, all right, Zeusy Poo, we feeding you first. It's fine.
We have to give in because if we don't, he starts flapping his wings. Okay. He causes a ruckus.
Gotcha.
He is too much. But we love him. He's just great. And then Loki is a bat that was found. He has a sad story. He was really young. He's also a hoary bat. And the other 2 are hoary bats. They're tree roosting species, the largest in PA. Really beautiful bats. And he was found grounded, and this woman contacted a licensed capture transport person that is through WIN. It's called Wildlife in Need, Pennsylvania. They're incredible. And she was preparing to put him into a secure container as the transporter suggested. And the neighbor said, no, don't do that. Just hit him and kill him with the shovel. And this is a tiny little bat that is helpless, lost mom, and is in need of help. And so he came into care, and we raised him. And now he's hopefully going to be flying in spring.
That's so sweet. I love that.
Yeah.
Are the bats that you bring in mostly releasable? And for the ones that aren't, what do you do?
So around 70 to 80% of them are releasable. It really depends on the year. It depends on the environmental issues that the bats might have to face, temperatures and weather dependent. And of course, some of them get hit by cars and things like that. So the ones that aren't releasable, depending on their personality, we may keep them as education ambassadors, or we might keep them for a companion for other ambassador bats. Sometimes we do have to euthanize. That is an ethical obligation. And it's the most humane thing to do. Sometimes, when they have broken bones, or they're not doing well, or they're sick and they're just not recovering, sometimes euthanasia is preferred. And so we do that. But most of the time, most of the bats get released. And that's like our favorite thing. If you come to our programs in the warmer months and see our public releases, our volunteers and ourselves and my staff, we love releasing the bats. I get so excited. I feel like a child when we release the bats. I'm like, everybody probably thinks I'm crazy because I'm so excited. But seeing that animal go from almost not being able to make it to getting to fly the sky again, it is incredible.
Oh yeah, no, I completely get that. Zoe and I have had some rehab turtles that we've helped out with rehabs, like by homing them and stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and gone and released and helped friends release them. And she's even done some stuff with like baby opossums that we then released and stuff. And watching them just scoot out is, I mean, there's not a dry eye. Like, come on, that is the most magical feeling in the world. Yeah, no, I have a frenemy. No, we're friends, but we're not our personalities just don't mesh, but we're in the same world. And I have a deep love for this person, but like we're never going to hang out just the two of us. You know what I mean? But we have gone and released some turtles and stuff together, and I have never meshed more with this person than when we're doing the thing, because
that's a special
Important.
moment.
Yeah, it is. And no, I would love to come back for a release. I would love
Absolutely.
that. Yeah, I think the thing that I want to see the most in this world, I'm a huge sea turtle nut, and I want to go to a sea turtle re-release and just,
there is a huge rehab center for sea turtles and other aquatic turtles in Texas. It's southern Texas. I can't remember the name of it. And when they had cold stunned turtles, especially when Texas gets really cold.
Oh yeah, this year's been crazy.
And I think it was also last year or 2 years ago. You'll have to research it. They took in a lot of sea turtles that were cold stunned. And then re-released them when it was warm. It was really incredible.
Yeah, I love all that kind of stuff. So what are bats, like as far as like when they get released? Will they stay in the same area? Do bats travel a lot? Are you just surrounded by released bats now? How does that all work?
So we don't release on our own property. I choose not to because even though we are in the country, there is a busy road right outside of our area. And so I choose not to do that. Plus, we really encourage releasing on preserved land. So we go throughout the entire area and release on mostly it's either DCNR or Game Commission land that is a preservation. And so we release there or where there's an established colony. There are endangered species in PA and there are federally endangered species as well. And so those threatened endangered species have to go back near their area. So we will release 5 miles, within 5 miles of where they are found. For the big browns, they will go anywhere. They don't care. I shouldn't say they don't care, but they are so social that they will either go back to the roost that they were at, or they will travel and find a new roost. We typically release our big browns. There's French Creek State Park. They have a really great colony of big browns. I think they're starting to get an abundance of big browns because of us. But really, bats are similar to birds that they have a homing sense. And so we can't release all 300 bats where they were found. That's just driving all over the state, and it's impossible. So we try to release them in an established colony, especially juveniles or babies that we've raised, and get them back to where they need to be. And most of the time they stay where they, I don't actually know if they stay, but
right.
With the numbers that increase year after year, we assume that some of that has to do with us. We have released red bats here on our land because red bats travel every few days. They don't stay in the same place for months on end or even weeks on end. So we do see red bats that we didn't see before. So maybe it's ours. I don't know. And currently we have a bat named Vinny. He is a big brown, and he was found here at the rehab in our recycling can. Don't know why. Or no, that was Oscar. Sorry. Vinny's different.
Oh.
Vinny has, he's different. Anyway, Oscar is the one that was found in the recycling can.
That makes sense.
Oscar, yeah.
Yeah. I like it.
Yes. So he was found here, and ever since we had him in care, there was one less bat flying in the sky above our home. And so we kind of figured he would fly over our home every night. We had 3 bats. It's very kind of sad being a bat rehabber to only have 3, but whatever. So yeah, I mean, they will migrate, they will travel. They don't stay in the same place all year long.
Okay.
Some of them travel more than others. So they're always flying.
That's very cool. You mentioned endangered species, and you introduced me to a member of a very endangered species. So talk about that a little bit.
Lady Longears is a northern long-ear bat that's considered now federally endangered. They were just listed as federally endangered due to white nose syndrome and the population collapse due to the invasive fungus. And so she's a permanent resident for non-white nose syndrome related, but we hold special permits to have those endangered animals.
Do you know what their numbers are like right now? Because I remember when they got listed, I did a story about this on one of my Zoo News episodes, but I can't remember it off the top of my head.
Northern long-ear bats are at around a 99% decline.
Oh, jeez.
And that's in the state of Pennsylvania. So right. Their range may vary as far as other states are concerned, but Pennsylvania is a really important state because, and I'm not saying the others aren't, but Pennsylvania is important because we have a lot of caves and mines, and we tend to be a really abundant in hibernating bat species. So bats from northern regions or wherever will migrate to Pennsylvania and overwinter here. And of course, the fungus, has a really high percentage of mortality in every single cave and mine. It's around 99 to 100% mortality rate per hibernaculum. So we have decimated, these populations have been decimated by white nose syndrome here. So the northern long-ear, the little brown, the tricolored, and of course the Indiana bat are all in severe decline.
That is unfortunate. How do you deal with white nose syndrome? For those who are listening, we did an episode back in the first season with a researcher working on white nose syndrome up in Canada, Jordi Sergers. And so if you want to learn more detailed stuff about the disease, you can go check out that episode. But can you give me just a quick synopsis and then tell me how you deal with it here personally?
Yeah. So white nose syndrome is a cold thriving fungus only, and it has a very specific temperature and humidity range, which is conducive to caves and mines, not conducive to barns and attics. So white nose syndrome doesn't affect bats, especially big browns, because big browns are a little bit different. It does affect big browns, but not to the magnitude of the other smaller. They're called myotis, so they're small, myotis meaning mouse eared.
Oh, that's so cute. I like that.
So those species are highly impacted because they go into hibernation earlier and they stay in hibernation for quite some time, whereas big browns go into hibernation a little bit later and wake earlier, and they have more of a cold tolerance. Your little browns, your northern long ears, your tricolors, they have a very specific hibernating temperature range, and it's not very variable. Since the presence of white nose syndrome, biologists have found that they are hibernating at colder temperatures, which helps to slow the growth of the fungus. The fungus only impacts the bats. Here in Pennsylvania, it impacts them from January to April, believe it or not. So it's not the very beginning of winter. It takes time for the fungus to establish itself and really start causing damage to their wings and any exposed membrane. So the way we treat it here in captivity is we actually founded a protocol. I found a protocol that works really, really well, and it's really simple. And I'm actually going to a conference tomorrow and presenting my research.
Nice.
So
That's awesome. Yeah. First of all, congratulations. That's really cool. But yeah, give us an idea what that is.
It's actually povidone iodine. Diluted povidone iodine is an antimicrobial, and it's great for bacterial infections, and we use it on humans. Obviously, if it's concentrated, it's not super well to use, so you dilute it, and the bats are capable of ingesting it with any toxicity issues, and it immediately destroys the fungus. It destroys it destroys the cellular components of the fungal spores, and so as immediately upon treatment, it does its job.
This is insane. This is astonishing. This is a disease that has been ravaging bat populations for years now, and you found something that fixes it.
Yeah,
good God, like that's amazing. Like seriously, congratulations for starters. And holy crap, can we spray this all over like caves? Like how does this? What's the next?
Yeah,
this is amazing.
Unfortunately, we can't. It is an antimicrobial, and there is really great beneficial bacteria, and there's more beneficial bacteria than harmful. Unfortunately, the harmful is pretty bad. So you can't just go around, unfortunately, spraying caves with antimicrobials. But my advisor at Kutztown University, she worked with me for 3 years, and we really are doing a lot of things with white nose syndrome, and her students now are doing a lot of stuff as well. But what I did was I had an epiphany moment. I had all these little browns that the Game Commission, Pennsylvania Game Commission, had come to me to help. And so we got, I want to say 15. It was quite a few winters ago. And we tried every topical, every, antifungal. There's fluconazole. There's all sorts of different medications, oral medications that you can give for fungal issues. Nothing was working, and the bats were dying. And it started becoming to a point where I was really losing my mind because you have all these bats that are just dying, and there's no way you can help them. And so I had an epiphany moment. I was treating another bat with povidone iodine, and she was healing beautifully. And she actually got released. And so I was like, So at 1 a.m., I texted my veterinarian at the time and said, hey, can we try this on white-nosed bats? And I had this one white-nosed bat after all those little browns died. I was like, oh my God, I have no idea what to do anymore. And so we had one big brown bat come in, and his name is Doyle now. And he was missing his tail membrane. He was missing his wing membrane. It was just totally degraded by the fungus. And I was like, hey, can we try this? And my veterinarian's like, sure, go ahead. And so I did. And he healed remarkably. So he's not releasable because he had so much wing membrane degradation that when it did regenerate, it constrained some of his finger bones. So he doesn't have flight capability. But he totally healed and had those finger bones had the membrane healed in such a way that didn't constrict the finger bones, he would have been releasable. So
that's so cool.
So we have a captive protocol,
right?
But we can't implement it out in the wild. But it's a start, and there are other researchers working, including my advisor, working on, wild populations and helping them in their environment.
That's like, I'm sorry that I'm so taken aback by this, but I've been aware of white nose syndrome for like 2.5, 3 years now. Like I said, I did a big interview about it. That was basically the end result was we're working really hard, but we got nothing. All these bats are still going to die. And it was not the most hopeful episode I've ever put out, though informative and good. And then to just hear like, yeah, because this thing has, like you said, like a 99 to 100% fatality rate. Mm-hmm. That's amazing. That's just amazing.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
It was really neat because you didn't understand that there's actually white nose syndrome is really easy to kill. The fungal spore itself is really easy to inhibit growth. I didn't realize that, but it took a team. I can't take all the credit. It took a team of people. It took the right conditions and the right connections to facilitate this whole thing to where it is today. And so we actually found co-infection. It's not just white nose syndrome. So there's another microbial that really kind of takes advantage, that lives naturally on the surface of us, mm-hmm. Not maybe the same species, but there's a lot of different microflora that live on our skin, same with bats, same with anything. And so under the right conditions, some of those microflora, some of those microbes can take advantage of a situation and become pathogenic.
Okay.
So that's what happened.
Interesting.
I'm a nerd.
No, I mean, so is everyone that has ever been on this podcast, including me. That is the point. We are here to discuss science and nerdy stuff and, cute animals in the process.
Yes.
Yeah, no, wow. Well, that's very cool. What conference are you going to? What is this?
It's called the Northeast Bat Working Group. And so there are many different bat working groups.
So many nerds. I love it.
Throughout the country, and North America in particular, and throughout the world. Oh, it's just so, I don't know. One of the things that really brings me satisfaction is seeing everyone working together, internationally, nationally. It doesn't matter. Just working together for a common goal, and that is to save bats. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't matter what discipline you are, whether you're a biologist or a microbiologist or a pathologist, veterinarian. It doesn't matter. We are all coming together, and that's just fascinating. And so there's that conference, but then there's also some subset, I guess you could say, some of those biologists and other disciplines and even rehabbers are a part of what's called the white nose syndrome response team. And I'm one of those members. So there's a conference for that too.
Very cool. Yeah, no, I am fascinated by seeing the connections, even just like, I've helped connect keepers that work with the same species and stuff. And then they start talking to each other and enriching the lives of their animals and stuff, and like building those connections and just helping with all of that. Just, it's been a very cool part of this, and seeing how tight and how small and how almost creepily interconnected the whole animal world is.
It's interesting when you're dedicated to something. Like, I'm just really one person, I had no idea that so many people would care. And I'm so fascinated. I'm so appreciative of how many people are following us and any bat rehab, because we're kind of like the underdogs of the rehab community, because bats are like one of the most misunderstood animals in the world. And I'm just so thankful because I'm just here doing this. Like, I didn't expect it to be a big thing.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. And I'm curious, you mentioned that, you don't get paid by like the government or anything. Mm-hmm. How are you affording this? Do you make any money off of what you do? And I don't even mean like living expenses. I mean like to cover that, much less, I know you're not buying a yacht from this. But,
No, definitely not. So we are actually funded by the public, generous donors throughout our community. And our community isn't just the people surrounding us. It's the community online. It's internationally. People just funding and caring about what we do and knowing that we live up to our mission of helping bats and seeing the stories of the bats and saving them, releasing them, whatever it might be. So we solely get donations from members of the public. And so we were really running out of space many years ago. And so we did convert a garage into the rehab setting. And so we did what we had to do in the moment for what we were doing and to be able to do what we do. But now we're running out of space. And so for the past 4 years, I've been diligently working, whether it be outreach programs, which I'm really huge on education to begin with, to fundraisers, to all sorts of different ways to generate funds. And now we are in the process of hopefully renovating and expanding. And that's really important. And that's where the money goes. The money goes right back into the bats. And so I think one of the things that sets me apart personally and professionally from a lot of things is we are not just rehabbers, we are researchers. And I don't mean that in the sense of we're not testing cosmetics on bats or anything like that. I mean, good. Yes, no, researchers as in like a productive research. We want to make sure the populations out in the wild are doing okay. And why aren't they doing okay? Is it just white nose syndrome? What else is it? And we do help the Pennsylvania Game Commission with surveys. And so we are doing a little bit of everything. And so some of our volunteers are grad students or undergrad students or doing research, or we help them do research. or give them ideas for their undergrad projects or graduate projects. And some of them are volunteers that will take on other projects like surveying, so I don't just believe rehab is the end all be all. I really want to make sure that when we release the bats, if there's one thing that I can do in my lifetime, it would be to make sure that their habitat can sustain them. Otherwise, what is the purpose?
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense to me.
I got real
cool.
there.
You did. I like it though. No, that's really cool. Yeah, makes sense. So, how can people help you? How can people fund this? How can people further your mission?
That is a great question. And so donations, whether they're monetary, we do have an Amazon wish list. I try really hard not to do Amazon because they generate a lot of waste.
Yes.
Being an environmentalist, I really try to lower our environmental impact here. So we do ask for donations from Amazon, but it's not often. We do have a wish list. We do have a mealworm company. Actually, we've been with them for quite some time. They're based out of Dauphin, so very close to Harrisburg. And so I think what we might start doing is if people want to donate but don't want to do it monetarily, which I understand, they can also pay for our mealworms because we go through more than 500,000 mealworms a year. If you can imagine that. And obviously monetary donations are really important. If you have an occupation that, through your job will be a charitable donation, we also will set up something for that because we are a 501c3 nonprofit. And so anything to that respect.
Okay, very cool. And I'll put all of your website and the Insta and everything in the show notes, and people can go and check that out. I have to ask, you talked about community support, and you said it's not just the people locally, but again, you've got a good bit of property here, but you're in a neighborhood. Mm-hmm. How are the neighbors doing with the fact that there are 100+ bats living in their neighborhood?
Some of them don't care. Okay. Some of them are really intrigued. We have neighbors who walk along the roads, just casually strolling along during the warmer months, and they say, "Hey, how are the bats?" and things like that. And we do have as we grow, people are becoming more familiar with us. Our township administrative, I guess, board of directors or board are very well aware of what we do, and they're very supportive. So thankfully, it's a very supportive thing. And I think it's because it took our populations of collapsing to really appreciate what it is that bats do for the environment. And being a keystone state, they are a keystone flagship species. So we have to understand that without them, our environment is kind of changing as far as the insect populations and things like that. So they are a huge importance, especially around here, because you probably saw, and you probably even have agricultural land out towards you. There's a lot of agricultural land here, and bats eat a lot of agricultural pests and forest pests that are really important, especially non-native, like the emerald ash borer. So. And no, they don't eat the lantern flies.
Can you train them to do so?
I've been asked if I could many times. Unfortunately, I don't think they acquired the taste for them yet. But they do eat Japanese beetles, and they do eat stink bugs. So, yay.
Yay, indeed. No, that's important. Very cool. So I think it is time. I'm going to ask you one thing, and then it's time for our favorite story. But first, is there just anything else you want to tell us about what you do, or just about bats in general, or, all the things?
I think it's important for a lot of people to understand that behind this organization are humans, are people dealing with everyday people lives. And just knowing that we do this out of the goodness of our heart because we love this animal, and all of our volunteers, they love seeing the bats. This is why they volunteer with us, and we just do this because we appreciate them, and we want to educate people. We want to shine light on, the nocturnal animals that everybody's afraid of. So hopefully by doing this, people will see how awesome and cute and fluffy they are and appreciate them flying the night sky, doing their little bat duties at night.
I love it. That's very cool. And now it is time. It's time now, don't you know? We've come to the end of the show. But there's one tale left to go. You're gonna laugh and say, oh no. It's time for the Rossifari poop story.
So I mean, bats are interesting because their poop is not as gross as other animals.
Right.
But so every time we have volunteers or we go into our flight cage, we always say you can obviously look up, but don't open your mouth. And that's because bats poop in flight. And there have been many instances where they have poops on us. And I mean, it's pretty gross. I mean, but we work with them. So just don't open your mouth when you're in the flight cage and you'll be fine.
Good advice. Always good advice. I like that. Cool. Well, thank you very much for taking the time to do this.
Thank you.
Okay, there you have it, folks. So, I'm not the boss of you, and I don't get to tell you what to do. But, we have a lot of awesome facilities on here and a lot of great organizations on here. But rarely have I seen one that is so inspiring to me and that honestly so much just small help could go a long way towards. So if you are able to do anything to help out the Pennsylvania Bat Rescue, I would really appreciate it. And, if you let them know it's coming from hearing them on the pod, that certainly does not hurt at all. You can go to pabatrescue.org and find a bunch of ways to help there. And of course, make sure that you are following along on Instagram at pabatrescue because they post really, really cute photographs and videos, lots and lots of videos of these adorable little bats. And if you know anybody who doesn't love bats, if you show them some of this stuff, I think they're going to fall in love. So, final reminder to let me know what you think of the new intro style and, having a fun thing at the end occasionally. And I look forward to continuing to see how this podcast grows and changes and evolves and all those good things. So thank you so much for being here. I want to say thank you especially to all of my patrons, and especially my Red Panda level patrons, Laura Schenk and Kristen Dickey. And remember, friends, the word credits backwards is Steiderk. The Rossifari podcast is produced, hosted, and engineered by John Rossi. Editing and fact-checking by John and Dr. Zoe Rossi. Our theme song is Sevens by Nathan Burke, performed by Nathan and John. Interrupting John theme and additional voices by Taylor Isaac Gray. You can reach John directly on Instagram and Facebook at Rossifari or by email at rossifaripod@gmail.com. Rossifari is part of the Daydreamer Media Network. Now, stop listening to me and go visit a zoo.
Zeus, we nickname him Zeusy Poo.